Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And yesterday I did a 2-hour video analyzing the entire case of the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Wasn't planning to do another one in the near future, but suddenly the FBI put out these photos and videos of an individual who clearly was at the Guthrie home at the time that the camera was removed and would be the abductor, at least one of the abductors of Nancy Guthrie. And so I did want to come on here today to talk about my profile of this abductor and specifically about the gun. There's a lot of people, just all over the internet, just going crazy about saying who this is, pointing fingers at family, relatives. And I want to tone that down a little bit as a profiler and what I think the investigators are doing behind the scenes so that we have a more rational look at this without going so nutty. So if you would like to see my video, the 2-hour analysis, it's a link below in the description. And if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe and hit the notifications. If I may do more on this, depending on if there's something to talk about. Well, here is something to talk about. All right, so I'll tell you what struck me first. First, I want to say I do not think this is a female. A lot of people are going there. Today, we always think that we can't leave women out of crime, which we can't. But oftentimes we have people jumping to, oh, it could be a woman, though. I don't think this is a woman. I do not. Just by the movements, the body shape, and all that, I do not think it's a woman. Now, having said that, in my analysis about this crime, I have suspected, and when I say suspected, I say this as a profiler or an investigator, in that as I would be studying this crime, I'm not coming to a 100% conclusion like people want you to, like somehow you're psychic and know exactly what happened. You're so brilliant inside, you can connect to the minds of the killer and you know exactly what happened. No, that is nonsense. It's not how it works. When you investigate a crime, you look at all the evidence, the facts, and you come up with things you can determine. You come up with concepts, that theories, and then you try to organize your investigations as to what you should focus on the most and what you should focus on a little bit and what maybe you shouldn't focus on at all. Like, no, this is not an alien from another planet. You can skip that one. So you want to be rational when you're looking at things, and so you know how much effort to put into the different avenues of investigation. So there is one person seen here. One of the questions I had is why does he care about that the camera to begin with? Well, obviously because the camera can video, but the camera was killed, removed, not just covered but removed. And so why do that? If you're just doing a home invasion, which some people have thought, and it's perfectly reasonable to think this could be just a home invasion gone wrong. Maybe it was a home invasion gone wrong, but why would you do the whole outside camera thing then? Because you're not taking anybody out of the house. So if you just cover the camera up so nobody, the camera did see somebody. There was not a subscription, but they finally managed to dig up this video and these images, regardless. Many days later, but still they managed to do it. So why bother? Why do that? If you're already covered up, why not just get the hell into the house, steal the crap you want to steal, hold the person hostage, do what you got to do and move on. Well, perhaps if they think the camera's still functioning and the videos are going out, that somehow there will be an alert sent out some ways. And I'm not sure how this camera worked or who would have access to the videos. So in other words, would they want to stop anybody seeing something in progress like a home invasion? But if that's true, why the heck bother to take Nancy Guthrie out of the house? So I personally do not believe this is a home invasion. I do believe this is an abduction. I don't believe it was she was accidentally killed earlier and therefore somebody had to cover this up and this was a fake abduction. I don't think so. I think this was planned. I don't think the person or persons who planned it are particularly brilliant. There's some things here you go, you could have done that better, dude. So I think they're just, they're not professionals. I think somebody had some idea and the idea wasn't the most brilliant one. So I do think it was planned. She was returned home. This was the middle of the night. Somebody comes up there and kills the camera because their intention is to remove her from the home. for some kind of attempt at a ransom, although we still have no clue how accurate and well, how real the ransom notes were. There is some indication that there were things in the ransom note that appeared that the person knew things that they wouldn't know if they weren't there. And if that's true, then they are ransom notes, even if they're pitiful attempts at ransom. Some people think the ransom notes are all totally fake, but it's hard to know from the outside of the investigation. So I really do not know. It does sound like after all this time, she's not alive and the family's just trying to get her back, her remains back. And it's not going very well because the deadlines have all passed. So what's going on? It is a little confusing, and it may be confusing because maybe idiots tried to do something that they weren't capable of doing. But let's go to this now. I want to go to him, who I think is a him. And the first thing one can say is that because there is photos and videos of at least the person in action, the sort of the body size, the height, the movements, some possible recognition of facial features, anything. This is very good for the family to be able to look at this and say, do they know this person? So if this really was a member of the family, you would think they would know pretty quickly now that, oh, hey, one of our own did this thing. I personally think that's unlikely, but let's say it's a friend of the family, a friend of a relative of the family, or some people think, oh, well, the son-in-law was in a band and the band had a guy that could be this guy. Well, maybe, but maybe it could be somebody who worked on the property, somebody who understood the layout. It could be a person who housekeeping, a pool person. It could be a person who came and did work on plumbing or the roof or the driveway or landscaping. It could be any of those people who had some familiarity and said, hey, here's an idea. This, she's pretty rich and her daughter's pretty darn rich. So, hey, what if we did this? Maybe we get some money. And I want to let you know that not everything it's when it's not super professional. A lot of times you do see a lot of foolish things that happen. You go, what the heck? So just let the detectives do their work trying to determine exactly what this crime was and why it went the way it did. Okay, so now let's take a look at this guy though. Okay, so I think it's a guy. The family will be able to help identify the person if it's anybody who's been in their realm. So that's a useful thing. But by the way, the guy's not left-handed. A lot of people think he's left-handed because apparently he reached down and grabbed some of those flowers to stick in front of a camera, which is very professional. Not. And I was like, dude, bring some duct tape or some spray, But he did want to remove the camera. It's sort of prevent the camera from seeing what we was doing, then remove the camera so that then from that moment on, there would be no videotaping of what happened after that, which would be the removal of Nancy Guthrie. So, okay, so he reached down and he was playing with some flowers. He had the flowers in the left hand. People say, he's left-handed. I'm looking at the gun holster. The gun holster is placed in a location which I believe it looks to me, and a lot of these things are a little difficult to see, looks to be like an actual right-handed. He's got his left hand there, so it can look like, oh, look at he's reaching for the gun here. No, he could be holding the holster there, and just his hand would come up from the holster like this. I want to explain the holster because this, I think, is an interesting detail. This is unusual. The majority of people, well, let's say law enforcement, they go for, generally speaking, have holsters on the side. My daughter's law enforcement, that's where her holster is. I do own firearms. I never had a holster because I've never carried in Maryland where I live. I'm in Hawaii now for 3 months, but in Maryland where I live, until recently there has been, you could not do concealed carry. You couldn't do any carry, quite frankly, you couldn't. So I wasn't running around town with a gun on me because that would put me in jail if I got caught. My weapon was for home protection. So I never did have an actual holster. So I didn't have one on the side. Now, some people will take a gun, for example, put it in their purse if you're female. Sometimes you'll carry it in your purse. Sometimes you'll put it in your glove compartment. Those are places they could be so that you could grab them, and then, or sometimes beside the seat of the car. And I'm not talking about legalities. I'm just talking about where people put things, which is why cops, when they stop you and you say, oh, my license is down here, and they reach down, you're going to get shot because they think you're coming up with a gun. And sometimes that's exactly what happens. And when you reach into your glove compartment, by the way, I use 2 fingers. If I'm stopped by a police officer and they're saying, may I see your registration, all that stuff, I say, and I tell them, I'm going to reach to my glove compartment. And I do it in slow motion like this. And I use 2 fingers because I said, you can't really grab a gun that way. And I don't want to, I don't want to scare the guy and get shot. So for me, I did not carry a weapon in my car. I did not have a holster. But I did have this one incident. I want to tell you about it because I want to talk about how people behave with guns. So I had this incident many years ago where I rented rooms in my house. I had this crazy lady came to my house, and she gave me a bad check, and she did a whole bunch of, she was crackers. And I did some things to try to encourage her to leave. They were legal, by the way. But sometimes people won't leave because they think you have to go through the entire system, which sometimes you do as a landlord. It takes 6 months to get somebody out, and you lose rent, and you have this crazy person in your house. It's horrible. So what I did was I did what's called a Mexican carry. So I want you to understand what a Mexican carry is. Mexican carry is when you take a gun and you just put it into your clothes, in your pants, into your waistband. Mexican carries can be done with the gun in the back. And sometimes people do that. They put the gun behind them so that when you walk into the room, nobody sees you got the gun with you and they don't know you're armed, and you could then do that. I put the gun in the front, okay, which is called an appendix carry because it's kind of where your appendix is. And for me, because I'm right-handed, you have an area where you could say 11 to 1 o'clock, or you could say 10 to 2 o'clock in the front. If you were, for a right-handed person, I had it on my right side. But, it can actually, oddly can shift any side you like put it. But anyway, mine was probably 1 o'clock, and I put it in my waistband. And that was an open carry because it was not in a holster. Why did I do that? Because as I was walking around my house, which was legal, I had a gun on me, which was legal because it's my home. And I open carried it so that the crazy lady would see the gun in my waistband and go, oh my God, she's crazier than me. I should leave, which she did. So it worked. So that was a Mexican carry, and I put it in the appendix position. Now, he is also carrying in the appendix position, and this is actually an open carry. And so the question is, why does he have the holster on the outside and not the inside? Okay, so there is an appendix inside. Let me read the actual term for it. AIWB, appendix inside the waistband. And then there's an AOWB, or appendix outside the waistband. So there's these different terminologies. Generally speaking, people want a concealed carry. They put the holster on the inside of the waistband. The gun is totally concealed, and you have some shirt over it or whatever. You've got a hood, a sweatshirt or something. It's completely concealed. Why would you put the gun here and not on the side? Some people find it more comfortable. Some people do. They find it more comfortable when they're driving. Interesting enough. Sometimes females find it more comfortable because they don't have any junk down there. And so some people go, oh, see, that means it's a female. No, guys do that too. A lot of it has to do with their body distribution, whether they're thin enough to have it slide. Does it fit comfortably there? I'm not going to get into all the male parts, but maybe there is issues on the male parts. I don't know. But people find the most comfortable carry. Why do they want the carry in the front? Because it's easier to grab the gun. It's the fastest you can do it. And also, when you have the gun behind you or the gun in a side holster, somebody else can come up behind you, grab the gun from your side holster, grab the gun from your back. But they can't it's hard to grab the gun right in the front. So it's an easy draw and a very fast draw. And also you're more in control of the gun. So that would be the reason. Why is it on the outside as opposed to the inside, however, is odd. Did he want the gun to be seen? Was that purposeful, like my whole experience at my house? I'm walking around with a gun purposely being seen so I could freak the girl out. It was a purpose to, when he came into the location and approaches his victim, that she looks up and she sees a gun right there. And she goes, oh my God, and perhaps doesn't fight back, doesn't make an effort or whatever. So I think that is interesting that it is in a holster. It's an appendix position. It's in a holster. I believe it's right-handed. It's on the outside, not the inside. This is not as common as other carries. And it is very interesting. First of all, the person obviously has access to a weapon. So that's something that when people are looking at who is this guy, in my opinion, I will use the word psychopath. Why do I use the word psychopath so often? Because who does this? If you're going to go in and abduct somebody, try to get ransom and end up killing them, which I think they probably did, whether on purpose or because they were stupid and she, was not the healthiest person. This is a psychopath. Why do I say it's important to know it's a psychopath? Because a psychopath is somebody you can recognize. If you're a family member, somebody in the family, Savannah, her brother, sister, anybody who knows the people around the mom, people come to the house, anybody in the neighborhood will say, I know this guy, I know, he's a psychopath. A psychopath is someone who you're either useful or you're in the way. They also have no empathy. They don't care about you. They only care about themselves. They will do whatever pleases and amuses them. They're usually pathological liars. They have a behavior that when you're around them, you sometimes people say you look in their eyes, they look like a snake, and that can be true. Other times they can be very charming, but you can't trust them. So if you know somebody you can't trust, this pathological liar has a weapon. What does he have a past history of criminal behavior? Sometimes not. But this person does own a weapon. Since he's got the weapon and he's got the holster, he's not a newbie to having a gun and a holster. This is just not somebody who picked up a cheap weapon and did a Mexican carry and just stuck it in their clothes and said, I'm going to go rob this place or go abduct this lady. This guy actually had those tools. Now, whether he got those tools to commit this crime, it's possible, but I think he's got a familiarity with the tools of the crime, the gun and the holster. So I would believe this person already is familiar with firearms and may already, and this is what's important, may already carry that way. Now, maybe he does a concealed carry, an appendix concealed carry. So normally that gun will be inside his waistband. So if you know somebody around there who has psychopathic behaviors, missing that evening, was not around at the time and is acting weird, doing whatever, and has that holster on the inside for the most part, you want to get the police a call, because I think that's extremely important. And then from that point on, I do believe this. It seems to me there's got to be a second person involved. When I'm looking back here, I don't see a vehicle. And that's one of the reasons I think that getting rid of the camera is important, because once you bring the person out, and then, and I don't know that they knew she was bleeding when they brought her out, but they could carry her out or conduct her out. But how far? Because she can't walk far. And also, you could carry her, but how far do you want to carry her? So I don't know if they killed the camera so you couldn't see her being removed, or because a car was going to pull up here and they were going to put her in the vehicle. A lot depends on where the blood trail is. The blood out here that we have seen recently has been straight down blood drops, which either means she's standing still or somebody's carrying her and standing still before they stepped out. I don't know how much more blood there is. Some people say there was more blood down to the driveway, which would make sense. I haven't seen it. But that's what the police are looking at to determine whether a vehicle then at that point drove up. And if a vehicle drove up at that point, somebody was driving it. This would be the guy carrying Nancy out of the house. Then somebody would pull up and he'd put her in the vehicle and they'd take off. Could it be a female driving the vehicle? Absolutely. Could it be another male? Absolutely. We don't know. Could there be already another male in the house? I guess it's possible. There are a lot of things we don't know from the outside of the investigation. I don't know what happened in the house. I don't have all the crime scene photos. I don't know what happened outside the house, break-in or no break-in. As I pointed out, if it's no break-in, it's possible somebody came to the house earlier. Could be a day earlier, it could be a week earlier. They could have undone a window in the bathroom so that they could then come back in and just raise the window and get in the house without breaking in. There's all kinds of things that can be done ahead of time. So that is what the police are going to be looking at. They're going to look at everybody who had access to her house. They're going to obviously be looking at every camera they can possibly look at. And as far as family members go, I know the family members that everybody's pointing at. I don't see any absolute proof that they're involved. People have said, like the sister of Savannah, oh, she acted weird when she was sitting on camera. I didn't see any weird acting. I saw a devastated sister. And I want to point this out, by the way. She's not saying much. And Savannah's doing the talking. And she's sitting there kind of just there. And people are like, well, what's up with her then? Well, Savannah is a TV celebrity. She's a TV host. She knows how to talk. And just because the others aren't talking as much or at all doesn't mean that they're involved in a crime. Now, when my father died at the hospital, I was with my two sisters. And when we came back to the house, my mother was at the house. Somebody had to tell my mother my father had died. Both of my sisters just looked right at me and go, you do it. Why? Because A, I worked in hospital for 13 years. B, I do television. I'm used to talking. And so I just sat down and I was the one who broke the news to my mother. While my sisters were like, so because that wasn't their thing. They knew I would be probably more confident and comfortable doing it. And I was able to do it. So just because Savannah does the talking and the sister doesn't, it's meaningless. And just because mom had dinner with them and the son and her son-in-law drove her home doesn't mean it killed her. I mean, as I point out, the police have to look at them. That's the same reason I had to look at the Uber driver, who's extremely unlikely to be involved because, he just got a call, or she, or whoever it was. And then the Uber driver shows up, picks up the person, takes them someplace and goes on about their business. The chances of the Uber driver being involved are like this. But will the detectives have to talk to the Uber driver? Of course they will have to. Or any Uber driver who's come there previously who might be aware of the house. They would have to talk to the daughter and the son-in-law because she had dinner with them. What was she like at dinner? How was she behaving? Was she concerned about anything? And then when you dropped her off, did you see anything fishy out there at the house? They would have to ask those normal questions. Would they look at them as a possible suspects just because they live nearby, which I think was 4 miles, and the son-in-law supposedly was one who dropped her off? Well, yeah, they're going to have to look at them. That's the requirement. But it doesn't appear that the son-in-law did anything to her, because then this whole scenario probably wouldn't happen the way it happened. So I do look at this still as a most likely, I'll leave everything open, most likely a planned crime by people who I don't know who they are, one person or two people. And because I don't know all the details of the inside of the house and everything else, I cannot come to any major determinations on that. Whether that this would be a home invasion turned into a kidnapping, it seems unlikely. I don't know that anything was even stolen from the house. So what the heck? If nothing's stolen from the house, what's the point of your home invasion? Home invasion gone wrong. I think it would be easier just to leave her there and run away. Or here's something else that would be easier. Make it look like kill the camera. See, if once you kill the camera, it's a home invasion or it's an abduction. So you can't quite say she was sound mind, but they might not know she was a sound mind. They think, oh, she could have Alzheimer's. She could have wandered away and we could just leave her in a bush someplace and that'll look like she just wandered off. I mean, if you're talking about unprofessional criminals, they could think all kinds of things. But that doesn't seem very realistic to me either. So far, I would say my top theory would be this was a planned abduction. And not a brilliant one, but that was the plan. But we're going to see. As more information comes in, I could change my theory on that. I could say it's more likely it's this. It's more likely it's that. And I know people want profilers to be so brilliant that they couldn't possibly not know immediately what happened. And that's just, you're watching too much Hollywood. Too many TV shows with fake profilers in them instead of real profiles, real investigators, real detectives. And it isn't that simple. And so you want them to do due diligence. You don't want somebody to jump to a conclusion and go down the wrong investigative avenue. You want them to pay attention and keep paying attention. As new information comes in, things shift. And you get more information, go, oh, Now we know this. Now we know a better direction to go. So please have some patience, folks. Please, people are just going berserk about this. And first of all, it's not your mother, unless you're Savannah and her sister and brother. It's probably not your relative. It's probably not your neighbor. You don't probably even live in the dang state. And there are people being hurt in your own state. There's crimes going on right in your own community. Maybe those you could spend more time on. But so calm down about this. Let the detectives do their jobs. And surely I understand the interest in this, but stop the finger pointing if you can. Okay. And all the politics nonsense that I've seen come out too. So do put your comments below, but keep it polite, okay, and interesting without being like off the charts. You know what I mean? So anyway, thank you for being here, everybody, and I probably will be back when there's some other really interesting information to share. Again, subscribe to the channel, hit all the buttons, and I'll see you soon.